Okay, we're live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the snow delayed council meeting from last Tuesday night. The team, we had a large group of citizens. Somebody's. Is that one up there?
That was me right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Large group of citizens here in the council chamber, and we also have the folks at home who are watching this on YouTube. And we say welcome to them. We do have some input on or rather people to speak on the public input session this morning. And there'll be another chance for folks to ask questions about anything that is discussed here in council today. And the people at home will have an opportunity at the same time to send us their questions. Just before we begin, I'd like to note that when we come to the approval of the agenda is going to be changed slightly, and that is to enable us to accommodate the closed session at approximately 10:30. So some of the items on the regular agenda will slip to after we end the closed session. That's only to accommodate some people who have different times that they're able to participate today. And depending on how we fare with the agenda, the staff reports topic on town hall exterior conservation pricing, and also the committee reports will be delayed until after the closed session. Okay? So with that, we'll begin by acknowledging that we are gathered this morning in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And this morning we gathered with the intent, followed by the living peace and friendship treaties, and we do so with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. We'll call the meeting to order. Council, you have an agenda, a slightly amended agenda in front of you.
Move to accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Now, you've heard the motion. On the question, all in favor, the motion is carried. Let's go to the minutes of the regular council meeting of January the 25th.
Mayor, they looked in good order. I'd move that we approve them as submitted.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Lonis Croft. You've heard the motion. On the question, all in favor, motion is carried. Let's go to 2.2, the special council meeting of January 31st.
Move those minutes be accepted as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor Carver. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wilson, you've heard the motion. On that question, all in favor, the motion is carried. We now, in the public input session, we have some folks, I think, who wish to speak. Two people, three people. The president of the Chamber of Commerce is with us. Welcome. Would you like to begin?
Sure.
Okay, we allow 15 minutes for these public
Don't need
input.
15 minutes.
Okay, each of you will have approximately 5 to 6 minutes, if you please.
Well, I'm here representing the board, Chamber of Commerce, and also Community in Bloom, which we've been gathering with Penny Carver to beautify our town. And there's a program called Community in Bloom that is Canada-wide, and we can register as a town of beautification. And judges come and judge the town, and we earn blossoms. So we're like a 5-blossom town or a 4-blossom town. And people will travel and look for like who has the highest blossom towns, and we'll go. It's like they're coming to Nova Scotia. It's like, well, which town's the most beautiful? And Mahone Bay's on the map is your 5-blossom town. And I'm here requesting there's a $495 registration fee, which we haven't. Our first board meeting is next week, but I'm 99% sure that we will all be in favor of paying half of that if the town is willing to pay the other half of that.
Okay,
I'm complete.
thank you. Ms. Herder, would you like to
Thank you.
speak
I-
to?
Well, Christine, I didn't realize that we were
But I was
speaking to the
behind
same
you.
thing. But I'll just be very brief, that we gathered as a variety of groups to learn about community and learn. And the enthusiasm around the table was quite singular. We felt very unified. This is more than about flowers. This was really about creating a very beautiful community for the residents. And that it was very much a process of community building. And that all groups and aspects of the community can work together, a very unifying thing. So that was the thing that really struck all of us, that this is primarily about creating a beautiful place for us. And as an adjunct, it attracts more tourism, just because it's already beautiful and we'll make it more beautiful for everybody. That was basically it. So I'm speaking in support of Penny Carver's motion to ask for funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Dan, did you wish
support
to
this,
speak?
I support this because, Mahone Bay Museum presents a Mahone Bay Home Garden Tour in
Yeah.
June. And, it would be an added attraction, for our marketing.
Good.
Mayor, just one quick question.
Yes, please.
The Community in Bloom initiative, is that a creature of the garden club, of the chamber? Which entity does it?
It
Fall
would,
upon
it would
its
create
own
its own
thing.
entity and bring all of those groups and festivals and schools and children and community gardens.
Individuals and
Yeah.
collectives.
And all.
Councilor Carver's in the know.
She's in the know.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And this item, I think, is on our agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
On, two, and Councillor Carver will be speaking to it again at that time. Mr. Franklin.
Morning, it's all blossoms, I'm just with the dandelion this morning, I'm sorry. I just wanted to take an opportunity, first I want to thank the CEO Dylan for responding, I think you guys got a copy of my questions, and I forgot it was a question, around a question and answer, so thank you for responding, because that does, clarify a few things. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I understand you have a lot of proposals in front of you this year, which could result in a lot of expenditures for the town, and which could result in some impact on cost of living in this town. And I just want to urge council to really seriously look at and evaluate these different proposals. Because as a taxpayer and somebody on a fixed income, it is getting difficult with cost of everything else going on, whether it's food, whether it's energy prices, all the rest of that good stuff. It's getting harder and harder to make ends meet. And I think we have a lot of people in this town. We talked about affordable housing, which is a great concept. But we have a lot of people in our homes here, particularly seniors, people on fixed incomes, that if we're not careful as a town, we could be driving these people out of town, making the situation worse. So I just want to ask council, before you go through all these presentations, to really consider what the impact is, not just on town, but on the people who live in this town and the taxpayers. I just had a couple of things. I don't want to get into detail because, we were talking about transferring, the social and the co-op. We're going to make a presentation here this morning, which we're looking forward to. But, there's a lot of things involved in that, transferring a piece of property, which could be below market value. Granted, that's covered under the NGA, so there will be hearings on that. But, the other side of that, if we, decide to give away or even sell at market value, that fire hall, we have to build a town garage. So there's things that are connected here we need to consider. The pool, $3 to $5 million. I understand that's a first time quote. I'm sure you guys are all looking at it as well. But again, I really urge that not only you consider these decisions, but get the town involved. I don't believe there's a requirement fully to involve town, the residents, through public hearings and all these things, but I would urge you to consider it because if you really want the support of the town, you need to get people involved. Okay, you need to hear the feedback. Okay, because we are talking about the long term of town. Since they only took 3 minutes, I guess I get 12. Right, okay. A couple of things I just wanted to add to it. I know you're gonna be talking later today about town hall upgrades, okay, and I know that was, part of it was in the budget, but I think only half of it's in the budget. And I'm a big supporter of the heritage, you know, the Home Bay Center, we registered that as a heritage building for all the good reasons. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but maybe we should look at the timing of when we do these things. So just in closing, I would ask that we make sure as council that we get input of people, we just don't make decisions. And some of these big decisions, okay, you know, we have an election coming in October, we could move some of these to a plebiscite. For maybe, I don't know how we do that, but I'm sure we can do it, where, you know, we have elections, people come in and vote, but then we have separate things saying, okay, we've had these public hearings, we've had these discussions. Let's get the voters to provide feedback, so just wanted to throw that out there this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else to speak? Right. Let's go right on to presentations. Mahone Bay Community Land Cooperative.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilor, Mayor and Councilor. My name is Jennifer Corson. I'm an architect and senior partner at Solterra Design. We're an architecture firm of 30 odd years, started in Halifax, but recently we've opened up a satellite office, a social office in Lunenburg, and my colleague Izzy Collier and I are here today as we've been working with the Mahone Bay Cooperative on the project that we would like to present an overview of where we're at and working with the cooperative in looking at the fire hall. I believe you've all got that in front of you, and Kelly's got me all lined up here. Thank you very much. So I believe it's been just under a year though that we've met with the cooperative in looking at the fire hall in particular and looking at it from a conversion to housing point of view. Solterra Design as a green architecture firm, I should kind of back up in terms of our focus, the reason for being Solterra. It's a made-up word, but it's sun, earth. Our beginnings have always been based in green design, green architecture, passive solar architecture, affordability, and also the looking at a low carbon and a net zero way of building so that we can afford to operate our buildings into the future. It's been a fantastic kind of focus in the world of building and design. We were kind of the lefties, the back to landers 30 years ago, and we haven't moved, but wisely the world is coming our way finally to see that building in a wise, efficient, affordable, low carbon focused way that we can do great things in terms of what we're building going forward. So you're all very familiar with the location, but I just thought I would highlight to you some of the things that are included in site selection in those wise green ways that I've mentioned. And walkability is a key one that I think this location of the fire hall where it's based in town is very key to allowing people to lower their cost of living by maybe not having dependence on having to be in a vehicle for every action in terms of going for groceries, walking to school, being in a area that in terms of potential development would be the continuation of a neighborhood core along Claremont and Kinburn streets. It's really kind of, it was on the edge or maybe was outside the edge of the housing area not so long ago, and now is in the midst of where I think clearly expansion is happening. As a adaptive reuse kind of a project versus starting on a bare vacant piece of land, there are lots of great potential or benefits to working with an existing structure. One is that there's all of this embodied carbon wrapped up in that building that's already there, the concrete that's in the foundation, the steel that's in the structure, the energy and the labor that's gone into building it. It's a shell that is ready to be looked at from a reusing the building aspect. And it's already serviced. All the costs of servicing a building, the sewer, the power, the water is already connected to that site quite efficiently. It being a corner property, even those distances to reconnect or to revise the site servicing would be quite easy going forward. I mentioned the proximity to the residential areas. For us, there's an interesting aspect of this solar aspect is its orientation and the ability to, in fact, improve the passive solar gain in the building, which is free energy, which means lowering the energy and operational costs of the building. It has a very good option for solar exposure to the rear or bottom of this slide, south being down. The site topography is a little bit tricky in terms of potential expansion, but we are looking at this. The project that I'm about to present is looking at everything happening within the shell of the building, so the topography is not a big concern. Any changes to usage, of course, would have us looking at drainage, but there is, I think, in greening or creating a residential project, we would actually improve the drainage, removing some of the tarmac or asphalt that's already there. And it's quite well sheltered in terms of, we know there are certain windy zones in our towns and neighboring areas. This is actually quite a sheltered location. And again, the structure fortified being able to work with it going forward. If I jump to pictures, I won't take long here because I think you're all familiar with it, whether you've been on a tour through it. Walking around the building, you'll see the drainage on the photo to the right is already established, dealing with the increase in elevation to the rear. The servicing comes into the rear of the building. It's already there, easy for us to access. Just in terms of its layout, I think most are familiar that there's been an addition to the building from its original construction, where the truck bay and the hall were the original structure. And then forgive me for the date of the addition, but to the right, the washrooms, the kitchen, and the storage area were a wood framed addition to the building, whereas it's a steel structure with concrete block infill for the main building. Its condition is what you would presume a fire truck bay to be in terms of a concrete slab and exposed steel structure. On the hall side, I'd say it's needing improvement regardless of the next use. Floor tiles, the ceiling tiles, the lighting system would need to be looked at going forward. Here's what we've worked with, presented back to the cooperative as a schematic design. The process that we follow is not to finally detail a project until we have clearly the understanding that this is the best way to go forward, the best division of the property in terms of the units and the layout. So we call this at a schematic design phase. A little bit further so for the cooperative to in fact envision how this building could be changed into housing units. The units are fairly large because, and there are 10 here that are laid out within the footprint of the main building plan. The little breakout to the left is actually showing an option whether that corner unit is 1 2-bedroom unit, or whether it's wiser to have a mix of more singular units to have smaller but studio units. So this could be up to from 9 units, or we go to option B, which would be a 10-unit project. The red represents the walls that would be new construction or new finishes on existing walls. We have some areas clearly where we want to open up more windows to provide daylighting into each unit. But we're working really efficiently within the footprint, the original layout of the fire hall. If you can imagine, there's only so much surface area on a balloon. There are only so many linear feet of exterior wall to create windows. So there's an inner area, an inner core that we initially looked at that could be a common area or a utility area or a laundry room. But in fact, we put that inner area just to larger units so that there's an independence of each occupant being able to have their own laundry. That also would minimize the cooperative's work to maintain a common area. So I think this is something that we discussed a fair bit and are pleased with this layout going forward. I don't think I'll get into each unit's design, but just to say that we do have a mix of everything from a studio up to 2-bedroom units in the layout. How we would go about this, from creating a well-insulated, efficient building to operate in terms, and 9 or 10 individual units to operate, would be in fact to leave the floor level that it is, but to build a raised insulated floor above it. We have lots of ceiling height. We're not actually kind of hampered by the height of the building. Fire trucks are taller than people. So we have lots of headroom in order to go up with the project and leave that base that's there. That height in raising the floor would allow us to drain within our raised floor and access the existing locations for drainage as well. We've had a structural engineer on the site so far to let us know that the structure is sound. You'll be happy to know. And it's also capable of taking the mechanicals, which would be individual heat pump units per house, and put those on the rooftop. So we actually have a far more attractive project to look at, but with a common mechanical rooftop location for our heat pumps. As I mentioned, Soltaire's work is in high performance architecture. So the assemblies, all these little notes, I'm happy to get into it maybe afterwards. But we're looking at all of the levels, the floor construction, the ceiling construction, and the walls, so that each unit is within a high performance, highly insulated, well ventilated apartment. Just to dial down a little bit on those, I'm sorry that's a little bit cut off to the left in terms of the summary of the units, but you'll see that we have everything from about 435 square foot studio apartments up to 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom unit. We have 2 accessible units that we've planned for, and this is not easy to do in existing buildings. There's good fortune in terms of this being a slab that's close to grade, that the right-hand side of the building in that addition area is easy to create 2 accessible units. And what that means is we just have wider turning radiuses, of course, all the way from leaving your vehicle, where we actually do have parking spots, wheelchair accessible parking spots for those units nearby, and that the units, again, would be built to a full accessible standard. What else can I tell you about the plan? I think they're fairly laid out and you have them in your report. You'll notice the living areas and the bedrooms, of course, need to have a window or an egress to the exterior. And that storage and laundry is all accommodated for within each unit. In working with the cooperative is to also provide some maybe more accessible ways of looking at the unit. So we've provided some little AXO views of what a studio unit layout would be up to that 2-bedroom. And again, we're at the schematic design phase of this project. Design development through to construction drawings will fine tune these layouts where window proportions or siding colors, those things are still to come. This is just looking at a higher level at the usage or of the square footage of the building. Mentioned about the exterior, and this is really a key part. Sometimes people think that architects only just going to stop at the siding and then we are just going to put buildings on sites. is that the existing site is, if you go back to those photos, it's asphalt pretty well around its entirety, and for correct purpose of what it was. This site plan is showing how we would have adequate number of parking units for the 9 or 10 units within the building, but that we would actually peel back the asphalt and create community gardens and shared gardens and individual entrances around each of the doorways, so that it's a more neighborhood, more housing-like project. Again, that continues the fabric of the housing that's just coming up the road towards this intersection, and that is starting to extend beyond it. You'll note the accessible parking spots to the right that also has shared space. Plan to hopefully maintain the generator that's there. These are some of the details that will come. That the poles, I believe, have already been decommissioned, the data poles that were there for the fire hall, and that we would look to have some improvements to the signage and landscaping. Here's a rendering at this point. Again, as I mentioned, is very early days in the design work, but that you see the individual entrances, the greening up of the exterior, a notable signage piece at the corner, whether that's a community bench where people can gather. Possibly the community in blooms would have 5 flowers based right in that planter, but clearly this would want to be an extension of the beauty of Mahone Bay, and for people to be very proud of their housing area. So why is this a good idea for the town to consider? We don't need to say anything beyond the word housing, the need for housing in all areas of all types. And this would be a faster creation of new housing units for Mahone Bay, and the fact that all of this infrastructure is already there. You don't need to select a site, you don't need to excavate. There's all the amenities that I mentioned to you. The ability for this building to be a barrier-free building is again notable. It's not easy to do in existing buildings, and that there's a way to make this an affordable and energy efficient building to operate going forward. I think the other points there are just kind of reinforcing maybe what I've covered, but that this would be the cornerstone, keystone first step for the Mahone Bay Cooperative to also get established further in having a project sooner, and that we're very committed to working with them and their goals to create affordable housing options for Mahone Bay. Of course, there's numbers, and I just got a few minutes left, and there is a full Class D estimate that we have had our cost consultants work through for this project. There are some items that aren't included at this point in the cost estimate, including the professional fees going forward, project management fees on the behalf of the cooperative, and any remediation that needs to happen on site. And there is some that has been noted in our report from our understanding and research background with the town on the building. It works itself down to, at this point, about a $2.7 million project to create those 10 units. The categories are highlighted there between the site work, the mechanical, the electrical, and the things that are included that are very important to look at this point are contingencies and escalation, because this is when at such an early stage and a high level, those contingencies and escalations really need to be in those budgets. And as you'll see, they're a considerable chunk of about $500,000 of that 2.7. This works itself down to about $368 a square foot, and I found a mistake. I apologize. That's including tax, not plus tax. You'll see it's a 2.7 project plus tax, and 3.2 overall, and that should be noted to be including HST. My apologies for the error. I didn't catch that quite quickly enough. Sending that to Kelly. Next steps. Clearly, you've got lots of energy and interest in this location, and that the usage of it, my own personal opinion in terms of what the cost is to create a structure for utility vehicles that are vehicles that shouldn't be in a key core of expansion for the town would be a budget that I think would be smarter as a purpose-built building than to only use a portion of this existing square footage that is in such just a growth zone and a potential a way to address housing quickly. The cooperative is busy pursuing funding opportunities. They have some numbers now and a plan in front of them that will help them in that aspect. And we're waiting and ready to work with them going forward, hopefully with this being approved and supported by the town. I think that if there's any questions for me, that would be great, but I believe Dean would like to kind of wrap up the work from the cooperative at this point.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions at this point for the presenter? No? Okay.
Just to provide a conclusion, thank you, Mayor. I'm Dean Waterfield. I'm the chair of the community, of the Mahone Bay Community Land Cooperative Board. In conclusion, this is an example of what the co-op can offer to the town in terms of nonprofit cooperative housing in this area of the town. At this point, we have 3 requests of council. The first, excuse me, is to commit to giving the cooperative, the old fire hall, to convert to the 9 cooperative nonprofit mixed housing units that you've seen in this study, based on this study. We do need that commitment to move forward on next steps with funding. 2, authorize town staff to work with us to facilitate the co-op to obtain funding from the Nova Scotia Housing Transformation Center to conduct a feasibility study on developing further cooperative units on the town-owned property on Hawthorne Street. And then 3, to facilitate these 2 requests that I just made, authorize town staff to enter into with the cooperative a collaborative agreement, a memorandum of understanding. We presented you with the draft memorandum of understanding that provides our perspective on what that type of agreement would be, but to work together collaboratively to develop cooperative nonprofit housing in town. Thanks. And now, any questions?
Councillor Carver.
Thanks, Dean. What was the first commitment? I mean, your first.
Commit to giving the cooperative the old fire hall to convert it to 9.
To give it.
cooperative nonprofit. Yes.
To donate it.
Yes.
And just for the record, the town does have a history of donating land, to properties on Fox, on Foberg Road. Were donated to Housing for Humanity.
Yes.
So just.
Yes, and part of our wish to collaborate with the town on this would be to do that in a manner that would ensure that there's housing on that site.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to phrase this as a question, but one of the problems we have with this building, as has been argued by others, is that the minute we decide to turn this into housing, it triggers a roughly $2.5 million decision that we have to realize for our public works people, which is about 2.5, maybe 3-year build. So it means that any initiative that you folks might want to have on this building is at minimum 3 years down the road, because you have to wait for that land. So looking at price tag at around about $400 a square foot, which is, to my mind, not affordable to start with, I wonder aloud why it wouldn't be a better idea for the town to come to some accommodation with the co-op to donate, sell it, reduce rates, whatever, the section of land, and there's a section that owned by the town across the street that is right beside all the same hookups for sewer and water and so on we have here. Why that wouldn't be a better, faster, and more robust fix for our housing issue.
we're more than willing to consider that. I think at this point, with the feasibility study done on on the fire hall, we've made this request. But we would certainly be interested again in collaborating with the town to determine how many cooperative units we could develop in that area, so that the Cawthorn Street, and the old fire hall, if that's your decision. If you want to decide to use the old fire hall for scratch, we certainly understand that, and that would give us even better clarity on using the land across onto the street to develop cooperative units. What I have had informal discussions with Dylan where we've talked about what I'll call gentle density, a two-story style building with the concept of the units that Solterra has already designed and fitted into the old fire hall. Those could be put into a larger building as well. What we're interested in really is helping the town in its pursuit of developing affordable units, affordable rental units. And the benefits of cooperative housing is that it's at cost. So there is no profit. People don't get displaced because the units get sold. They don't get displaced because the landlord wants to move in family. It's a fixed cost form of rental housing that only increases in its affordability because the cost increase aren't based on the profit model. So I think you've had studies in terms of the housing need in town that also shows that many individuals in town, if they lost their current housing, they wouldn't be able to continue to live in this town. With a large number of cooperative units, we can help provide those opportunities to those people to continue to live in town. That housing study also showed that a lot of couples at the moment rely on the two incomes in order to afford to live on town. And if that relationship ends, then people can't continue to live in town. So I think, from our standpoint, we would like to develop as many cooperative units in town as possible.
And further to that point, that this notion here really limits you to 9 or 10. Whereas an acre and a half or whatever, pick a number of land across the street, given our height restrictions, it's almost unlimited.
Yes, and I think in our, informal discussion that we had with council that those 9 units in that building, they'd be great, but really we have to develop more in order to be sustainable as an organization. And that, the old fire hall, it's a really good demonstrator on what we can offer. And we would like to, as I say, collaborate on figuring out what we can do for the town.
Councillor Lawrence Cross.
So, did I understand that the waiting list for the co-op would take priority and housing would be from a Mahone Bay residents? Would that be how your board sets up? Or will you be taking people as they get on the list? Because you seem to say, about people transitioning from their homes to smaller accommodations, accessible accommodations as well. So, the waiting lists are usually long in co-ops. So are you as a resident of Mahone Bay a priority on that list?
So
Can you bump people because
at the moment, we don't have a waiting list because we don't have housing to offer, but what we do have is a membership. Some of those members don't live in town any longer, but they used to live in town and they got displaced and they would like to move back. A lot of the members live in town, have housing difficulty at the moment, and will want to live in town, obviously, in a co-op unit. Once the units are built, it's up to the nature of the organization at that point to determine how people move into the units. By collaborating with the town, we could certainly work on the statement you just made about initially units being available to people who for one reason or another, live in town and would like to move into a cooperative unit.
Thank you, Dean. Will, Councilor Payne, 30 seconds.
Okay, well, 35 minutes for the presentation, 30 seconds for the question.
No pressure.
Fair enough. So thank you very much. It's been about a year. I think council had previously made decisions kind of respecting kind of the initiative and waiting till you got your ducks in a row. So this is a tough format to have, a conversation like this within a structured 10 minutes conversation. There's a lot of financial issues that the town would need to consider around next steps. And then whether there's a plurality of support to kind of proceed with one or both of the requests. So I'm kind of looking forward to the next conversation where we get into maybe some more gritty details around the economics and really some of the assumptions that our staff would need to make, trying to figure out the overall economics of the donation. And the property tax that would be generated going forward and all of those kinds of things. So I think this is a terrific a table setter, and looking forward to the next conversation.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was meant to be, is that table setting demonstration of this is what could be possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome for being.
Well, let's move on in our agenda. To the file on correspondence, we have one letter in there from Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Councillor Carver,
I move that the letter be received and filed.
thank you. Motion seconded by Councillor Now. On the question, all in favor? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's go to the information sharing agreement with Elections Nova Scotia.
So just a quick commentary on this one, but it's a standard part of the process now with the preparation of a voters list. Either you go out and enumerate or you just share the provincial voters list, which I think everybody does at this point.
Yeah.
And the recommendations include, well, I'll take any questions if there are any.
But that also includes a process by where someone who is new to town, who's not on the provincial list, can get themselves added to.
Yeah, we will always have that process, which will be promoted throughout, but to start with, you start with the provincial list.
Okay.
That would be the easiest by far.
Mayor, I think there's I'll just proceed with the deputy mayor, if you don't mind. Just
No,
thinking, I think
please.
everybody would be in agreement that council, I'd move the council direct the CAO to enter into the information sharing agreement with the Elections Nova Scotia on behalf of the town of Home Bay.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Carver. On the motion, on the question, all in favor? That motion is carried. Let's go to the Engage Nova Scotia proposal, item 6.3.
So this one is a little bit more unusual. We're presenting essentially a proposal from Engage Nova Scotia that would be a cost to next year's budget. They are offering, I guess, a service in the sense of surveying for opinion around Nova Scotia. And they're basically trying out a new model in terms of how to fund that through municipal support. So happy to take any questions. The mayor was also privy to the briefing they provided back in December.
What's the timeline on this?
So I believe that they're not actually going to need the funds until the 2024-25 fiscal year. So it would end up being a budget item for next year, but at the same time, where it is very small, much like other small requests, I could convey that we have accepted it, if we've accepted it, or if we refer to budget, then I'll wait to get back to them.
Councillor Carver.
What's your impression of how the town might benefit from this information? I just recall not being overly impressed with the last round of information. Maybe that's just me and I was in a bad mood or something, but.
I don't really have a judgment call on the usefulness of the information. I guess all I can say is that, Mahone Bay is small enough that although we would be, included in this opinion survey, it's not going to provide information that can be statistically relevant specifically to the town of Mahone Bay. And so it's more about funding Engage Nova Scotia's continued operation.
But Engage Nova Scotia does have a product out there now that offers perspectives on the quality of life, quote unquote, in the different communities in Nova Scotia. This will expand the survey information or the data upon which those, the issues are based. And it is an opportunity for us, or I suppose for the chamber, as a marketing perspective, to say to people, here's what's good about living in Mahone Bay. Here's why people chose to move here, and this is what they found when they got here. This is what people like about living in Mahone Bay. So it is very much a personal opinion type of survey, but it goes to the notion of why is Mahone Bay one of the higher rated communities in the province. That's based on their current data. So this
So-
will expand and update the data they're using.
Who are we marketing that to?
And but you might choose to market it to.
No, I guess what I'm saying is like, the taxpayers who already live here are well aware of the virtues of the town. Like, I don't think that the people who already live here need a survey to say why Mahone Bay is a great place to live.
In the, from the organizers of the survey, there is very much a need to do that because it can demonstrate to the citizens who are here why they have made the right choice.
Well, I can guarantee you, there's not one taxpayer in town who is waiting with bated breath for Engage Nova Scotia to tell them they made a good decision to move here.
But perhaps if we get more useful information in the new survey, we can share that with them and they'll know that it's there.
Yeah, I'm good enough to do that personally, you know?
I just wanted to, yeah.
So, I mean, the data is great, but it's not our role to fund it.
It's not a what?
It's not our role as a town to fund data collection at this level. The provincial government should.
We do all kinds of things that are not our role, Deputy
Yeah, but
Mayor.
not this one.
And I guess I'll just, if I can add, the provincial government obviously did used to fund more of these activities.
Yeah, and they
And
stopped.
so this is an active effort to find funding, and yes, you're absolutely right, it's our role to decide whether this funding model is reasonable, or they'll keep looking for other funding models.
Do we know how much they're looking for?
It was in the report.
$532.
$532.
Yeah, but that's like 5% of our grant budget, right? So it's twice as much as we give Mahone Bay School, or as much as we're gonna give communities in Bloom. It's as much as, you know, that's
So
not to mention,
this is just a provincial government downloading on municipal folks without necessarily them saying do that. And this is not the only, so the reason I say it's not our role, this is not the only data collection that the provincial government is neglecting. And so eventually there'll be that creep up. So will you start now collecting, we used to have school-based data on addictions and stuff like that. The provincial government said, no, we're not collecting that anymore. Will we now start collecting that? For me, that's more important than that.
Okay,
So by us giving this $532 does not necessarily guarantee that they're gonna do this survey in Mahone Bay, does it? I don't see.
well,
anything there.
they do the survey in every town. They actually target,
Oh, okay, so it's already being done.
by municipality. It has been done before.
That's all.
you wanna guess what the answer's gonna be? Mahone Bay. You know, we welcome you to share the beauty around us.
Councillor Wilson?
I'd like to move that council approve a contribution of $532 to Engage Nova Scotia to support the 2044 25 quality of life survey.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? No?
Moving on.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly, for that.
Oh, you will?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's appropriate to second the motion, and then people can get to vote on it or not.
There you go. Okay, we have a motion. On the question, all in favor? One. Okay, motion's over. Thank you. Let's go to the 102 Pine Grove complaint investigation. Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, council has received this report. I'm not going to walk all the way through it, but I'm happy to take any questions in this regard. And obviously, there is a recommendation that has been presented, which does represent the fact that staff would be continuing to work with Ms. Cassidy to follow up on any stormwater issues. Obviously, they're not a particular problem at the moment based on the investigation, but there have been on and off issues at that property, and we will always continue to work with her on those issues. But the recommendation here is specific to the issues that were noted that were determined to have been an issue with the project, and that represents some minor damage to the lawn and the outside faucet, which was used to hook up an alternative water supply during the project. And we would certainly intend to address those, but I think it would be appropriate for council to make that, formal. But that would be standard procedure for the town. So if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, no.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. The monitoring, what would that look like? Is it sort of on request, or will the staff have a regular schedule of visiting and checking? How will that work?
So what we check on is the catch basin outside. So Scott and Blake will continue to periodically check on the catch basin outside. Public Works obviously maintains the catch basin outside. Scott and Blake are checking on it to see if there's an undue flow coming from the basement drain, which would represent an issue that could be a leak, because there's been an alleged concern around leaks, but we have no evidence right now to suggest that there is a leak in that area. So that's all we would do. If the property owner contacts us, of course, we'll do more.
Okay, so so just to follow up, it says in coordination with the property owner. So our staff would then talk with the property owner and say, this is what we found, so.
Well, my expectation is that if we don't ever see anything unusual, then she'd have to contact us for us to, like, we're not gonna just say, we checked and there's still no water in the catch basin. So if we see anything, we'll let her know and say, hey, we noticed something. Are you experiencing issues in the house? And if she is experiencing issues in the house, I'm sure she'll let us know, as she has done in the past. So that would be my intention. I don't think we're just gonna check in like every 2 weeks, even if we haven't observed any issues. Like, we only have a small team.
Councillor Lawrence Croft and then Councillor Wilson.
Has the homeowner been part of the discussions and is aware of this process?
Yes, so we met with her for about 90 minutes at her home, ran over, looked at everything, investigated in the house, and then let her know that we'd be bringing this report to council. And that our recommendation at this time was that we would continue to work with her because there were no issues noted that we could actually address. I mean, other than the outside damage issues that were noted.
But I would assume too that if we had a heavy rain or something, that would be looked at right away by the Public Works.
Yeah, I
Part
mean,
of their
if she's having
ongoing-
an experience that she feels is, outside of the norm, like obviously when there is rain, people often who have a basement that does collect water, has a sump pump drain there, and maybe she would feel that it went normally, because it should, right? She's got a dehumidifier down there, she's got sump pump. That should be sufficient. But if there were an issue like the issue during the project, which was that the sump pump was running and the water was going out, and then the water was falling back in and it was going out, coming back in. And that's why we gave her a new connection to the catch basin. So that type of issue, like, she would know for us, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I am very puzzled with one thing, and that is in the original letter, she said that it had been determined that there might be structural damage to the house, and that her insurance company were unwilling to insure her, and she was having trouble getting her mortgage. And she had to go to, I think, Able Engineering and pay for an engineering study to determine the structural integrity of the home. So the question is, who told who what? Who decided that there was some structural problem? Who called the insurance company? It doesn't make any sense that she would call and say, gee, I don't think I should have insurance because my house has been damaged. It doesn't make any sense that the contractor would phone and say, I think we've damaged the house, you better come and look at it. And I assume the town didn't do it. So how did that communication work?
I'm sure I don't know.
I want to be sensitive to personal information here, so I'll try to answer in a circumspect way. The insurance is in relation to stormwater, not any incident during the project. So it wasn't town staff or the contractor, would have had nothing to do with it. There was no insurance claim concern there. There have been noted issues in the past with this property going back many years around water in the basement. And therefore, my expectation would be that the property owner themselves reported those issues to their insurance, which would potentially trigger the process you described. But again, I don't want to speculate on somebody's personal affairs.
But she was talking about it in the context of that backhoe sitting, and I quote, inches from my house.
If she did imply that in the letter, that was not something that she confirmed in conversation. And it's my understanding it has nothing to do with that.
But I think we need to understand that more clearly, because the way it read to me, the cadence of the thing, to use Joe's word, is that if there was structural damage caused by a backhoe, then it's our nickel to fix that. But
I guess I can only say so many times that there wasn't, and no one is alleging that there was. I don't feel, well, in conversation with her, she didn't. So I mean, I
okay,
guess we'll file it as a claim if she refers to it as a claim in the future, right?
okay, thank you, that's good enough.
Councillor Carver.
I would be willing to make the motion, but in striking out the last phrase in coordination with Ms. Cassidy, because the description that was offered by the CAO about what the monitoring would involve didn't strike me as including coordination.
Yeah, but coordination, it's not for us as council to determine, it's for staff to determine what the coordination looks like. What we need to determine is that coordination should happen, with sort of giving instructions to staff. How they do it, we can take them to task if they don't do it the right way. That would be my understanding, that coordination piece.
And obviously, it's council's prerogative to make whatever motion you want. I think we're still gonna do the same thing, because I honestly have no other understanding of what else we could possibly do in this case. And it hasn't been made clear to me in the room that there's anything we could do other than what I've described.
Or maybe there's a way in which you can see that coordination happening and we can put it into the motion.
Frankly, I don't know how you would monitor the situation without talking to the property owner. Does that mean that
I understood from the CAO that the monitoring would be involve periodic checking of the dry well at the edge of the property, but not necessarily conversation with the property owner.
But if there was water in that well piece, I would have thought that they would then go to the property owner and say, you know, what, are you experiencing any problems? This doesn't look like it should look. So I guess the question is whether that constitutes coordination, or is that the word? I don't know how you could do without talking to the property owner.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I mean, if there's no outside evidence that there's an issue and the property owner hasn't contacted us to say that there's an issue, we have a very limited number of staff, so we're not just gonna check in with her on a periodic basis, and I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. Unless directed by motion of council, but keep in mind, you have a very limited number of staff to work with, so adding that kind of task will cut down on their ability to address leaks and other issues around town.
Councillor,
I think I just have to go on trust on this one. I mean, I believe it's a reasonable process, but the word coordination means something different to me from what is implied there. So that's all.
do you want to make your motion?
I will. Do you want me to read the whole thing? That council accept this report for information and direct staff to write to Ms. Cassidy confirming the town's intention to repair minor property damage, the outside faucet and lawn, resulting from the stovepipe lane wastewater project, as well as to continue monitoring the stormwater situation at 102 Pine Grove Street in coordination with Ms. Cassidy.
Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor seconds. On the motion, on the question, all in favor, motion's carried. Thank you. Let's go to the comfort station accessibility.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So obviously this report was prepared with the expectation that we would be meeting on Tuesday evening. So if you've read it, the deadline was Wednesday. I will say I did take the liberties to submit the application. It was something we'd already indicated in the budget that we would be applying for this particular fund. Unfortunately, as is noted in the report, as quickly as we secure external funding, the cost to construct and renovate increases. So this is really a challenging scenario because the time it takes to secure external funding is almost making those external funding is only just covering the inflation costs. But we're hoping to have secured ACOA and this grant, which would together be approximately 50%, a little bit more than 50% of the accessibility renovation. So council will have to determine, we get these two grants, do we proceed with the full scope of work, including the exterior, which Jonathan has recommended, but it has nothing to do with accessibility, it's just based on the age of the buildings.
Mary, do we want a retroactive motion to cover this up?
For formality.
I think we should have,
So moved.
okay. Seconded by Councillor Now, on the question.
Mayor, just, I mean, I think this is wise to apply for this money. I mean, when we talked about this originally in the budget deliberations last year, I mean, these are eye-wateringly high numbers to provide a public service really to the tourism segment. But my understanding is that the large block of funding that we received from the federal government last year had modest strings attached to it. And our original intent were to use those funds, i.e. the $290,000 grant, to fund half of the swimming pool. That just shows you how, to the CAO's point about, like, not more than a year ago, we thought we were gonna get a brand new swimming pool for, say, $750,000. And now we're talking about like built pyramids types of cost structures here. So I think the CAO also mentioned that when we received the money, there was some expectation we're gonna spend it. So like the onus isn't, we can't just sit on these funds that we've already received, it's already in our bank account. So I think out of all of the hierarchy of needs, I honestly wouldn't have thought that this would have risen to the top. But given the fact that these funds are this project's eligible for that particular pool of money, and the fact that the government wants us to spend it, I think this makes total sense to proceed. But I mean, aspirationally for the community at large, like, no, we don't want to spend $200,000 on Comfort Station as our #1 community priority. But given all of the jigs and the reels and the funding partners and how the money's flowed, it's logical to proceed. So I'm okay with that. That's just one opinion, but I'm personally okay.
This is, I think, more about accessibility than it is about comfort stations.
Well,
We are mandated.
right, it's upgrading the comfort stations to meet the
To
accessibility.
make it
guidelines.
accessible,
Yeah, fair
yes, I mean, that's.
Mandated.
Terrific project, it's just, it's a lot of money
It is.
for 800 taxpayers to pay.
Exactly.
Anyway, appreciate the conversion.
Okay, all in favor on the motion? Sorry, did you have a comment?
I just want to point out in following up from Councillor Feeney's comment about it being for tourists. There's certainly comfort stations are well used by residents of the town as well. People can have accessibility issues or not, so they're used by the. And I think that the costs associated with accessibility of municipal properties are going to be considerable. That's just the nature of the beast, and it's required by legislation.
And I think it's also a leadership perspective for council and town hall to provide to the other merchants in town who perhaps will look at their facilities and make them accessible until they get a price for it.
I think just one final point, Mayor, that like this, so our neighbor in Lunenburg, who has, an economy driven largely by tourism, has had a lot of deliberations for closing their comfort station due to costs. So I just think, on behalf of the community and the taxpayers and the council, I mean, there has to be some recognition that council has made significant investments in supporting those two assets to the benefit of the tourism sector and the business community. And these are large investments, and the operating costs now are $70,000 a year, and this is hundreds of thousands of dollars of renovations. So I just think we got to keep in mind and let people understand that we're not like this is a non-core function, and I think it's terrific. It's great that we can do it, but not every community is doing this. And our peers in Lunenburg are not. In fact, that's what they're trying to put the marketing levy in place to fund their comfort station. So while they're making those types of choices, we're making other choices, and I think we're making the right ones. But I think it's important that someone acknowledge that.
So is it imperative that we do both of the comfort stations? Because let's face it, during the summer and stuff like that, the majority of people using the comfort station at the government wharf are boaters and that type of thing. I don't think the general
That's-
public is going down there.
That's not correct, Councillor.
Okay.
Now. If you go down to the wharf and watch them, you know, it's the bus tours of tourists.
Okay, bus tours. yeah.
And it's the people who drive in, go use the facility and they get in their car and drive on, or they're walking. I think the rest
Yeah, but
of
I'm
the
just-
year, Irving gets the bulk of the traffic.
I'm just saying about the accessibility part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
I get-
I guess, can I just answer Richard's question about, so we could separate them, obviously, these grant applications have been for both. If we, you know, only wanted to proceed with one and the costs have increased so much that this would only cover one, and we could go back to the funders and explain that. Or we could stagger them and do one this year and move into another one in the future.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so in the interest of time, I think at this point, you're only being asked to, I guess, put in approve this motion to apply for the funding.
Which has already been done.
Which
That's
already
a
done.
very
So,
difficult
yeah, if we can
question.
vote on that. and
This
move to
is
the
a
next-
courtesy
Yeah, exactly.
motion. On the courtesy motion, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, let's go, 6.6 Town Hall Exterior Conservation Pricing.
We're bumping that down.
So, yeah, we were gonna.
Oh, that's it, Joe, don't-
In order to ensure we talk.
I've got an asterisk on it.
Is that able to wait until the 29th? Or the 20?
I think it can, but at the same time, you know, essentially, we've just quickly, without taking a lot of time, we've awarded a part of the work
Yeah.
to Mid Valley. And, you know, obviously, we're gonna change that. It changes their windows ordering and stuff like that. So the sooner they have the information, the better. They haven't come back and given us a specific day and said, we have to have an answer by this day. So if we can come back to it, either after we've quickly gone through the rest of the agenda before 10:30 or after the closed session, we will.
Okay, then we go right down to 7.1, the Audit and Finance Committee application.
Mayor, I'd move that council appoint Gerald Trites as a member of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Lawrence Croft. Just would note that we are dealing with this motion in advance of Mr. Trites doing his conflict of interest, or not conflict of interest, code of conduct declaration, right? Okay, with that, on the question, all in favor, motion's carried, thank you. Councillor Carver,
Yes, so,
Communities in Bloom.
so I do have a motion, regarding Communities in Bloom, asking council to support the project. Recognizing that it would indeed be a pilot project this year and that the, intention would be for nobody to do much more than they're already doing, other than the town would officially recognize the effort, literally by paying the registration fee of $495. And this is really to capture what the deputy mayor has previously referred to as community passion. I mean, it was quite remarkable. The speakers earlier referred to me having initiated this project. Well, I really didn't. I just was interested in the Communities in Bloom invitation that council, we all received it. And I just forwarded the information along to a bunch of people who said, oh, forward it to somebody else, with the result that people representing 9 or 10 different community organizations ended up in this room watching a Communities in Bloom webinar on the screen here. And it was quite phenomenal. It was spontaneous interest, spontaneous chemistry, and I think it's important to capitalize that and support it. The Communities in Bloom initiative does require a municipal government to be involved in some way. Different communities have a different structure of the way they're operating. And I just want to really capitalize on the fact that the Communities in Bloom project is focusing a lot on environmental and climate issues. Now, it's not just flowers. So and that really ties in very closely with our own strategic planning. People, the communities that have participated, and there are many, have said that the feedback they get from the judges is worth thousands of dollars in consultant fees. Because it gives them tangible plans, ideas to work on for next year. So the thought is that if we do it as a pilot project this year with the financial contribution from the town, we could then decide what the community would like to work on for the next year from the judges' suggestions. We have so much in place right now. We have so many policies in the town on environmental climate change issues. The community itself, representing all those different organizations, has remarkable projects going on that will score well, I'm sure, in the communities in bloom. So just stressing again, no requirement from the town other than possibly discussion down the road, designating one staff person and one counselor to be a liaison. But the community groups will do it on their own. The garden club will do it, the chamber will do what they do, the festivals people will do what they do. And et cetera, et cetera. The butterfly people, the Mahone Bay Center with its community food garden where they're contributing food to the food bank. So all that having been said, I would like to move that the council of the town of Mahone Bay provide support in principle to a loosely organized Communities in Bloom working group in Mahone Bay in 2024 by contributing the Communities in Bloom 2024 registration fee of $495 that is required for a community with a population of 1,001 to 5,000.
And the chamber is going to pay half of that.
Up to?
That wasn't my motion.
No, I know.
No, but the chamber might.
They might.
Yeah.
Councilor? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just a question. With this registration fee, is this something that would be an annual fee? I'm not saying that we're being committed to, but just curious whether this is something.
It would
that
be
is
annual,
being an
yeah.
annual fee. So there will be a need for us to say, well, we're not committing to that.
Right, so this is for 2024. It says 2024.
Councilor now.
Not to be a penny pincher, but I think we should really look at the chamber paying half of that. Because let's face it, all the money we put in that contributes to the chamber and stuff like that, I think that it should be very important for them to pay half of that fee.
Okay.
I think that is captured in the motion, isn't it?
No, it's not.
No, it doesn't mention the chamber.
Oh, fair enough.
It's just the fact that the town is going to pay for it. If the chamber chooses to reimburse us for 50%.
Well, once
Yeah, I
you
guess
pay
I
it,
just
they're not
wanted to
gonna do
ask
that.
about how, are we, like logistically, if the motion passes, I presume we will pay it. So then I guess the implication is we should follow up to the chamber and say, if you decide at your meeting to pay half, pay us half? Like, is that what?
Well, I
Or
think
do I not?
we're all expecting several requests from the chamber for several items throughout the year. So as far as establishing a ledger of the various requests that we're inevitably going to receive, hanging baskets, festivals, and who knows what else, like I'm certainly willing to support Councillor Carver's motion now, and
Yes.
figuring out in the fullness of time, we'll figure out.
Worry
how
about the
that-
other piece later. Councilor Kerr.
Another piece here is that this, if the town does contribute this fee in full, it's supporting initiatives of at least 9 other groups. It's not just the chamber.
Right.
It's not a contribution, but it's making that participation possible.
And I think that was, with my rationale for asking Val the question about like under what umbrella does this initiative fall with under, and I heard like everybody's involved, so it strikes me that if we fund this directly, then we're good to go.
Did you want to comment, CAO, on the Communities in Bloom concept?
I
You had
guess
some
The
experience.
only question I would have had, I didn't want to belabor things this morning, is, going forward, most communities have established a registered society. There's at least 9 organizations, and presumably those organizations would get together and figure that out. But at the same time, to register for this first year doesn't specifically require that, so I would think of this as kind of a trial year. And presumably in that year, something will be determined, but I would say in my experience, it's very important to the sustainability of any communities in Bloom effort to have a defined organization heading it up.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's something they'll come across and decide for themselves that that is a very reasonable and necessary step to take.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a comment?
No, we should vote.
Excellent.
At the deputy mayor's suggestion, you heard the motion. On the question, all in favor, motion is carried. Let's go down to item 8, committee reports. There are no motions in those committee reports. Does anyone have any questions on any of the reports? Oh, there's no motions that I could see. Councillor Feeney?
Oh, just Mayor, I was just gonna move that we accept the reports for information.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Now. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried.
Can I just, sorry, I was gonna say a discussion, but normally when we accept the policy and strategy update, we do take that opportunity to talk about the upcoming meeting agenda. And I had suggested that we make the primary purpose of that agenda determination of priorities for the remainder of the council term. If everyone's good with that, we don't necessarily need a motion, but I gotta prepare and send out an agenda to you folks between now and the meeting, so. If anyone wanted anything else specified, obviously we can,
Yeah.
get through that priorities and we decide the first priority is something we can actually talk about the same night, great, but that. I won't specifically include that on the, I'll just say priority center.
Yeah, and it just says that the date would, the content would be determined as the meeting date approaches.
Yeah, well, which is, I guess it's now is why.
So this is the
Everybody's
approach.
comfortable with that.
Councillor Carver.
If I may, I just have one comment, from the police advisory board
Yeah.
minutes. In which there was reference to, discussion about scams and frauds in the community.
I brought that up.
Yeah, and people are aware or not that the senior safety program, provides workshops, as requested. I mean, so there's nothing to stop anybody from asking for that presentation to be done.
Yes, and during the meeting, we did have discussion with our new constable. And he's very willing to work with us in coordinating a program with the senior safety.
There seems to be some renewed enthusiasm for scams in the marketplace of late. And there's almost a day-to-day report, particularly on CBC, about somebody or some scam that's going on. So it's timely for the PAB to have that discussion.
People need a second job.
Okay,
So can we do the 6.6 now before 10:30?
Will the public have an opportunity?
Oh, right,
to Probably stop now to allow that.
yeah, the questions, and then we'll get a little break in between that and the closed session. Anything online from the public before we go in camera?
That's watching right now. One question, I think it was kind of answered in discussion, but shouldn't we include the cost of building a new garage for town vehicles in the cost of this project? Speaking to the
Opportunity.
Yeah, I think that would be a consideration when you're, donating a building, but it's gonna cost us X amount to replace it. Yeah, okay. Anything down here?
Yes, we fast questions, great. Just coming back to the social housing, I think there was some really good questions that I kind of jumped over the finance stuff, but it's my understanding that from the town's perspective, the only financial commitment we have at this point in time is actually whether we sell a property or donate a property, is that correct? All the other costs, although a gentleman here, I think, started talking about having collaborations and stuff, which kind of says maybe there is cost to us or, providing staff time and that kind of thing. But as of today, my understanding is that the only cost we have spent is, I guess, when we did the original check of the bill, is that correct? So I just the town on the hook for anything else.
We haven't made any commitments.
So we haven't spent any money.
You're right, the only cost we've actually incurred is that, relative to the use of the building, the town has undertaken a study to consider potential renovations for use for public works.
Yeah.
And then we didn't fund the study that we were just presented with the results of.
That's good to know. Yeah, I think you basically said that most. On the pool, obviously it's a big expenditure, I saw eyebrows raised and stuff like that. You know, want to have a pool, that'd be awesome, but what would the council's position be? How would you involve public input on that through a hearing? I don't think you have to do a hearing for something like that, you know, a little better than I do, but that's a major expense. Katie said originally we're thinking $750, now we're talking, I understand it's, you know, it's an official quote and, you know, there's all the goodies, we'll go through it. But will there be town input through a hearing on something like that, any major expenditure? Is that, you know, in consideration of transparency and input?
So obviously councilors will be free to chime in, but I just wanted to say in terms of your point about, so it isn't required, and I just wanted to clarify. So a hearing is usually required for land use planning processes, but in Nova Scotia, capital expenditures don't require a public hearing. We normally do elective engagement around major capital projects. And if any councilors want to speak to that, we certainly have contemplated that going forward.
Councillor Wilson and Deputy Mayor and Councillor
So
Finn.
just to say that there has already been some. And that is, I forget what form it took, but it was last summer.
Yeah, preferred
We asked
site,
a
yeah.
bunch of, you know, asking for, it's like, the question's like, do we need a pool?
Mhm.
Where should it be? You know, what should it look like, those kinds of things. But I'm guessing, I may be wrong, but I'm guessing when the rubber hits the road and we're looking at a bill for $4.5 million, it's not gonna get through public consultation.
It's not going to?
No, but from my perspective, it would not.
Oh, you mean you wouldn't support?
Because I would say.
Right, that's right.
Well, my understanding is that when we had that conversation is eventually we will bring the conversation to the public without making a decision whether we are going forward with the pool or not. But to ensure that we wrap up the data collection, to ensure that we wrap up, this is what people want, this is how much it will cost. What do you as citizens want? At the end of the day, I think that's, if I remember right, that's a conversation we had. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's been discussed by now. We haven't committed to a specific engagement process, but we certainly discussed that, yeah.
And to
Oh,
include.
Councillor Finn was next, then Councillor
Well-
Owens Croft, and then.
But I think the takeaway is, I really believe that council proceeded appropriately with the cadence of, you know, aspirationally, we want a pool. We think it's affordable, but before we do anything, we should probably get subject matter experts and engage a professional project management group to come in and proceed with the evaluation. And that funding obviously has paid off in spades because now we have real facts, and these are eye-watering estimates, but they're coming from professional engineers and people who know what they're talking about, you know, versus, you know, so I think we've learned from previous mistakes around, you know, proceeding without all of the facts. So I think that's the takeaway, Jeff. Second thing is, you know, aspirationally, we would be the only municipal unit that doesn't have recreation facility like a swimming pool. I mean, so I'm sure we've had one since 1969, and we'd like to have one going forward, but these are generational investments with generational sticker prices. So, and would require more than just municipal government funding. I mean, we would need lots of partnerships. So, you know, people around the table who've been here longer than I have would know that that project was kind of fundraised back in the day when those kinds of things were possible.
Yeah.
So I think to your point, the council has limited ability to fund a project of that size without significant support from the community.
Okay, correct. Just one thing, Councilor Carver, you mentioned about in the past, we donated land to the
Habitat for Humanity.
yeah, under the municipal act, I'm assuming we did hearings back there, so if you look at it, any donations or anything valued over $10,000 under paragraph 52, it says that you have to have 2 hearings. I'm assuming that was done, but going forward, now I like the discussion we heard about building on new land for the housing group, okay, and whether that's more affordable. But if we're doing anything that's below market value, let's keep in mind, we do have to have those hearings, okay?
Yes.
That's mandatory.
But we do.
If we decide as a town to sell anything below market value, to make whatever reduced costs, there's a municipal act calls for 2 official hearings with that.
Oh, yes, of course.
Because that will get people involved saying, yeah, this is a great idea, I'm going to live with that, or no, I have concerns.
I think, just one point. So the council previously has engaged 2 different, professional vendors to establish price points for the building.
Mhm.
So while that information is not disclosed, I mean, the community can take comfort and the council does have an understanding of the bookmarks of quote unquote fair market value.
Mhm.
So it's not like we're going out. However, the things proceed,
Mhm.
that information is known to staff and to council.
So I think-
Just for obvious reasons,
All
it's not in the
join in
community
the-
domain, because
Yeah.
why would you want to pre-establish a
But to be
book-
done,
a
you-
placeholder?
It's encouraging to hear that, because I think
Yeah.
on the street, people are going, geez, we're gonna get involved in this, so I think more transparency
Yeah.
we can make.
Councillor Owens Scott, did you?
Well, I was speaking to the last topic, the pool,
Okay,
and that we have to be careful to, we're talking about us making the decision, but we've had a group of volunteers from the Pool Society working for, 50
Yeah.
years. We need to include them in the public conversation.
So I think I was next.
I thought you would.
So I did, and it's a clarification that some of the ballooning cost was related to accessibility. Isn't that correct?
With respect to the pool?
Yes.
Yeah, about $1 million of
Yeah.
the price tag for the pool would be accessibility.
Accessibility. But that's also what we're using to get the funding foot in the
Yeah,
door.
potentially, those components could be funded 100% by the federal government,
Yeah.
but. We'll see.
Did you have a comment?
No, just join us, because we're getting close to.
I know.
So just keep,
Tony, did you have something you wanted to discuss? Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No. I just have one last question.
You'll cede your time to Jeff.
I know, the line of credit, thank you for the explanation, Bill, on the line of credit, but I think we added 3.7. I'm not sure what that was, but is that something that was forecasted, something we knew, or something?
Yeah, so I mean, any major projects that we're going to be borrowing for, especially ones with external grants that come in, we'll set up the line of credit to accommodate those during construction. And then when the project is complete and we've netted out the external funding, then we take that resulting amount into long-term borrowing. So the line of credit's used on a continuous basis, but it's for budgeted projects. So right now it's the purchase of a new fire truck and the new fire truck, not the used fire. I know there's a used fire truck. The purchase of the new fire truck and the solar garden project are the 2 current active projects that are going to borrowing that are on the line of credit.
So we knew as a council, that's what we were putting our hands on, it wasn't provided with that.
Yeah, I mean, if we have cash flow to avoid it, obviously we'll avoid it, but the line of credit with a small unit like this one, it is necessary. Those kinds of projects.
Got 3 minutes left, go ahead.
We are at the end of our regular agenda. We have no new business to discuss. We now have a closed session. Entertain a motion to go in camera. Anyone? Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Now. All in favor? Motion is carried. We're gonna take a brief comfort break. And then we'll start again.
And we can turn off our Zoom.
Pardon me?
Yeah, we have a new Zoom invite.
Yeah, we got a different connection,
Oh.
A new Zoom. Oh.
just to make life interesting.
Okay, so close out this one.
Yeah.
Leave webinar.